Hey, what's going on, family? Man, I gotta do this video, and I really don't want to do the video because I really like this brother. And before I did this video, as Christians, we're supposed to try to reach out to people, and not, go out to them publicly first, try to have some dialogue, correct them of their error. And so I reached out to this YouTube personality. His name is Ruslan KD. He's probably got about 56,000 subscribers. He's pretty big on YouTube as it relates to like Christian podcast and creative content. And so I've been watching a lot of his videos. His content's great, his setup's great. And I'd say probably about 80% of the stuff that he says I agree with. That's much better than most of these people on YouTube, especially when it comes to things of God. But obviously, when we're talking about good things of God and we're preaching and we're teaching and we're held to a real high standard, and it's very important that we have a huge platform like that. That what we're saying is always correct. If there's something that is that you're not sure of, you gotta be self-aware and honest enough to be real with yourself and not be puffed up, and just, if you don't know for sure, don't speak on it. But if you're out here with that type of platform and you're saying things, even if you're saying 8 things that's correct, but you're saying 2 things that's wrong, doesn't mean that you're a horrible person or anything like that. But those things can mislead people that need to be corrected, right? And for someone who, I'm just sitting here looking at his page. I mean, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4. At least 4 of the last, 6. I guess you can say maybe 4 of the last 10 videos. He's pretty much calling people out. He's calling off Candace Owens. He's calling out Brandon Tatum. They were calling out Marcus Rogers, who I did agree that does need to get caught out, because he's arrogant too and full of pride. And again, he says a lot of good stuff, but this is the one thing that his YouTube guys get. I don't know if it's because, it's as simple as, getting all these YouTube views have gone to your head. You starting to think that you are now like some expert. And these guys, they get real defensive and arrogant. And it's funny because when they're telling the truth, they usually give it in the right spirit. But, and it's all, and I'll show you the text message. I texted all this to Ruslan KD, and I will add these text messages to the video. This should be on your screen, so you can see, how I approached him, the response I got. And, he did a video, a couple of days ago where he was just getting on people who didn't agree with anyone that like wrote anything in the comments or disagreed him or called him out if he was wrong. He's just talking about, I'm gonna delete you. You ain't nothing, blah, blah, blah. You think you calling people names, mocking them. And it's like, bro, like, if with this platform, if you're saying stuff and you're saying it in such a way, you're acting like that you're always right. When you're wrong, the same way that you're calling other people out when they're wrong, people are going to call you out. In the same way that you're saying, okay, I'm calling out these people. I'm not doing it in a mean way. I'm not trying to be nasty, but I'm trying to rebuke and correct. How come you can't be rebuked and correct? And I'm sure you'll say, well, I got leaders, I got Christian counsel and all that. But first off, this whole thing that you and a lot of these guys got about the church in America is just completely off. All right. Like, if you think that the church especially in this country, is what God wanted or anywhere close, you're crazy. So again, you got those church biases and that denominational and church teaching in the back of your mind, where you're able to speak some truth, right? But your pride in your church and your church leadership and what you were taught in your denomination blocks you in some areas, right? And you have to become like Jesus said, you have to become like a little child to enter the kingdom of heaven, which means you have to come to him without no biases, no other teachings from man, because he said, my yoke is easy. It's easy to understand the things of God. Man has made it hard. And, he's talking about these things are non-essentials, but to you, they're non-essentials. I don't see anywhere in the Bible where God made commandments where he added asterisk to these and said, these are essential, those are non-essential. And I know he'll probably pull up Paul saying all things are permissible, not all things are beneficial. That is true. But even Paul did not say that it's okay to speak wrongly in terms of teaching the Bible. And it doesn't say that Paul never said that it was okay to be wrong in doctrine, which affects lifestyle, because that would be a license to sin. All right, that's the hypocrite. All right, non-essentials and stuff for people because they don't want to have to confront those truths, so they just say, "Oh, it's not essentials. We ain't gonna argue about it," because they don't want to deal with it, and they really can't argue the point. And when I hit him up specifically about when he said that tongues is a spiritual language, where it's not. There's no biblical content in any form or fashion to even imply that. Now, people can talk about speaking in tongues in terms of being able to speak in other languages to give the gospel, which happened in Acts. God gave the apostles the ability to speak in each spectators and listeners' own language, because otherwise they wouldn't understand. This is not any spiritual hard things to understand, but we make it hard. You see what I'm saying? He gave people the gift of speaking in different languages, right? Like, he may give he gives gifts now to speak in other languages to go do missionary work, right? But it's not like, that's a whole bunch of foolishness, bro. It is. And there's no biblical content for it. So you cannot put that out there, because there's so many people caught up in this tongue stuff and they think they're speaking a spiritual language and praying to God, but they're not. It's a whole bunch of babble. It's more demonic than anything. But you won't even dialogue because you're wrong. So you just say it's not essential. But then you'll go jump down to other people and jump down in their throats. But what if they said, well, that's not essential too? So basically we can all say, hey, you know what? I don't want to be called on my stuff, so it's not essential. And it's really a shame because, again, Ruslan and Marcus Rogers and others do give a lot of good information. There's no doubt. There's no doubt about that. I want people to be careful and understand what I'm saying here and calling them out for this, because same way that he calls out people publicly and he says, you got to answer stuff publicly, I reach out to him in private. I offered a phone conversation. I was very graceful in my text messages, and he just shut me down. He's too good. He's too big. I ain't got time, blah, 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 blah. But yet you can go up there and you can preach that stuff. So you're going to be held accountable by everybody, right? Because if I'm a believer in God, and the Bible says if you see a brother in error, to correct him, right? Doesn't mean that I have to know you, be best friends with you or be in your direct vicinity, but we're all together now in a virtual community, right? A virtual church, right? Not the church building that you guys promote, where you feel you're pre-telling people they're supposed to support a pastor. That's not true. People don't need to give a tithe to support a pastor. Jesus said to give to the poor and to the needy. All right. I don't see any poor and needy. And in fact, most of the preachers I know are far from poor and needy. And he may not realize this because he's not black and he's not in the black community. But most of these ministers in these churches that's getting all these tithes, they're rich while their people continue to stay in poverty and deception and spiritual and mental oppression. But then, he'll support you, but he doesn't want to get into all that, because then you got to talk about the rappers, right? Because you don't want to talk about what rap and hip hop has done to the black community and black youth, because you came up with that. So he's had a lot of biases, and he's like most people, and you got to be really, really self-aware, and just you got to love that mirror and be honest with God enough to say, what are my biases, right? You know what I mean? I played basketball all my life. And, when I started to learn a lot of what these NBA guys were doing and what they stood for and how it was not aligning with Christ, like LeBron James, some of these guys, even though I love LeBron James as a player, I love basketball, I train NBA guys, all that stuff, right? I have to say, nah, bro, I don't care how many championships you won. You're wrong. And I couldn't have the bias of, because I could hurt myself in my own industry by calling these guys out, right? But I don't care, because if you're wrong as it relates to not to my opinion, but to God's. And that's all we're holding the standard to. It's not about, everyone has an opinion, but what does the God say? Every denomination, every Bible school, everybody has all these ideas, but what does the Bible say? It's clear. When people, what did people do when there was no denominational churches, when there's no theological schools? Just open up the Bible and let the Holy Spirit speak to them without all these biases that unfortunately that we have in this world. But I don't, I'm not going to keep going on and on because I don't want to make this like an attack on the brother, because here's the thing. If you are someone who sees this video and you're like, "Dag, man, this dude's kind of fake, man. He does got some fakeness to him. He is arrogant." But here's the thing. I still believe God's using him in some ways, because the 80% of stuff that he says is true, is beneficial, and will feed you. So don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. But just like any of these guys, I take a little bit from all these guys, these YouTube guys, different preachers I meet, different books I read, right? And I take the meat and I throw out the rest. And if it's correct, I go with it. And if they're wrong, I just throw it out. But I still open myself up, right? Because it's not about me thinking I know everything, right? Like I used to think that, the mark of the beast and the Antichrist was coming around the corner. But then I got into the Bible and I stopped listening to people and YouTube preachers and all this and understood that's not true. That's not going to happen. That stuff happened in AD 70, right? So I had to change my theology because it didn't match up with truth. So even though I had preached something, I had to just say, you know what, I'm wrong. I was wrong. That's cool. Not be defensive about it. I was wrong. You see what I'm saying? So, again, don't unsubscribe from the brother or nothing like that. Check his stuff out. I hope and pray at one point that he humbles himself, which is hard to do when you start to get all these views and all this stuff. My YouTube page, I ain't got no followers like that. I'm a nobody. And in some ways I ask God, well, how come I don't get all this? Because it's tough, man. It's tough to stay humble when you get that type of attention, when you have that type of platform, and then you feel like no one can question you. So that's it, man. Cool brother, man, and just pray for him, man, as we all need prayer, as we're all trying to get better. Peace. Hey, I just want to do addition to the video. After I finished the first part of the video, Ruslan did text me back, but he's like, "I ain't got time to talk to you, bro. I'm in the middle of the work day, blah, blah, blah. But you can get on a Patreon call, spend money to get on a group chat." And I don't know, man, like, it's crazy, man, because just that made me. And then I was looking at the very first message that was an automated message where you hit them up and it's immediately talking about use this code to get 20% off merch. I don't know, man. It seems like he's all about the money and the YouTube views. Again, you don't got to blow him out with the bathwater. He does say some good stuff, man, but I don't know. I try to have grace. I really want to have some grace with this brother, man, but I can't call it, man. But let's keep praying for him, man. Let's keep praying for him as we always do and loving him. No need to attack him. Take what he says that's true and throw out the rest. Peace.